Fresh centerpieces are really popular for the holiday season, and I'm going to teach you how to create a beautiful one really easily. We're going to begin with a brick of fresh floral foam. I've already soaked this and it's got some weight to it, and I'm going to place this in my container. My container has some prongs in it that'll keep the foam in place and keep it from shifting around. All you have to do is just place it inside and wedge it down. And now we can work in some candles. Now I'm going to work in some beautiful burgundy tapered candles. So we're going to use these decoratively, and anytime you have a flame, you always want to be watching it and never leave it unattended. But these really add a lot of drama and height to any arrangement. We have 3 today. I'm going to start with 1 in the middle. And they do sell fancy schmancy little cups that you can place into your foam to hold your candles. But after 10 years of doing this, I've never had an issue and they always hold up just fine. So I'm going to place 1 in the middle, and I'm going to place 1 on either end. And the ones on either end, I'm actually going to work in a little bit deeper, and that way we have the middle one being the highest. So something like that is perfect to me. And now what we can do is start working in some greenery. Okay, so now it's time to prep some greenery. So I'm going to move the arrangement out of the way. And what we have here is some beautiful boxwood, and I absolutely love this, and this is going to work great as a filler. So with this container, we don't want to see the foam in the end, so by using this, we're going to do a lot of coverage, and being an inexpensive or relatively inexpensive foliage, it's going to do a great job of covering up that foam, and then we can add some more decorative foliage on the top of this to make it a little bit fancier. So to work this in, we're going to start with a branch or 2. And I'm going to use our cutters from nicksseasonaldecor.com, and all we're going to do is break them into smaller pieces. We want them anywhere from 3 to 5 inches, and they don't have to be exact either. And that is the benefit of designing with flowers and greenery, is that having different lengths actually works to your advantage because you're able to work them in into any gaps and cracks where you need something shorter, where you need something longer. So I'm just going to go throughout this entire spray and snip down all of these individual branches. So I'm just going to continue cutting some of these branches off, and then we can work these directly into the foam. And with this foam being hydrated, fresh oasis, no matter where you live in the world or the country, as long as you keep it relatively cool and out of sunlight, this will last for months. Now that we have all of our boxwood pre-cut, we can work this into the foam. And I want this to be an elongated centerpiece. I think it'll look beautiful on a dining room table, so I really want to make it longer than wider. So I'm going to start with 2 long pieces and place those on either end of the foam. So now that we have these 2 pieces in, and I always like to work in the longest first, and that way we kind of set a guideline for how big we want the arrangement to be. Now we can start filling in with a bunch more boxwood. But one thing I want to point out is that we don't need to go for complete coverage here. Sometimes you might get carried away with any given product, especially initially or early on in the designing process, and the only thing that'll happen is you're going to waste a lot of greens, and it's not necessary because we have other things to work in. So this is as far out as I want to come this way, so now let's do the same thing on the inside. So I'll place 1 piece here, and then we'll do the same thing to the other side. And now it's just a matter of filling in. We never really want to come out any further than this greenery. So all 4 of these pieces now are our guidelines, and we never want to place anything further out because that's going to misshape the entire design. So now we're going to start working in pieces either the same length or slightly smaller. So I finished about half the design, and as you can see here, we have a nice little collar, if you will, of greenery. So we're going to do the same thing to the other side, and by looking down on it, it helps balance either side so that we don't have one side that's standing out further than the other side. As this is a centerpiece, we do want it to be somewhat even. So now we filled in all the way around. Now it's time to work in a few additional pieces up top so that we bring this greenery from down below all the way to the surface. So all we're gonna do now is just take a few extra pieces and stick them up top so that we have it balanced throughout. We never want any one given greenery to just be like a ring around a design or on the top or on the bottom. We want it consistently worked throughout. So now this is what the arrangement looks like with one greenery, the boxwood. Let's work in some fancier greenery. Okay, so now we're gonna work in some cedar. And one thing about greenery, you guys, and if you've seen my other videos, we talk a lot about texture. So you can overdo a lot of different things, but it's really hard to overdo texture, especially with greenery. So the nice thing about this too is that it adds a textural difference, but a color difference too. So it's gonna add a little bit more of a chartreuse green, and look at how pretty this greenery is. So we're gonna work this in a little bit differently than we worked in the boxwood because it's more of a flat, finer texture versus the boxwood. So I'm just gonna remove the rubber band. And here is just one branch right here. So what we're going to do is just snip them individually. We don't want too much of anything in one spot because then it's going to look bulky. So we definitely want to work in smaller individual stems like this for the best effect. So just snipping them down. Smaller pieces like this work great as well. All right, so let's start working in this greenery now. And I'm gonna work some pieces like this because it has a nice cascade to it. And I think it looks really pretty kind of hanging. It kind of looks like a waterfall. And then we'll also have pieces kind of flat underneath as well. So we're gonna take some more of these, work them in, and look at just the textural difference, just instant gratification by working in 4 pieces. So at this point in time, I also have these little pieces that broke off. We don't want to waste anything, right? It's fresh greenery. We want to save as much of it as possible. And I just got to take a second and say, if you guys could smell how amazing this smells already, not so much the boxwood, but the rest of the greenery we're about to work in is just permeating throughout the room, and it smells amazing. So don't throw these little pieces out. These are great fillers to cover up any of the foam that's still showing. But we can just take these and fill in. And here is our final little piece. And here's what it looks like with 2 greeneries worked in. So now we're going to work in one of my favorite textures, and that is juniper. And the reason I love juniper so much is because of the beautiful berries that you see on top of the stems. Look at all of those berries. It's just covered, and they're bountiful, and I love them. I love the color of them. They're kind of a dusty blue color, and they're just perfect. So we're going to work these in, and I think these are going to add a nice contrast texturally and color-wise. Look beautiful with the burgundy theme that we have going on. So for this, all I'm going to do is just snip off some of these stems and work those in as well. This one is definitely more of an accent than a filler, and I think it's really pretty. So let's just snip some of these down. All of these little individual pieces we're not going to throw out. We're going to put to use, and whether we use them in this design or not, they will be used at some point, right? There's so many different arrangements that you can have throughout your home, and especially with fresh greenery. Fresh flowers, you might have to pull them out as they kind of fade away, but with the fresh greenery, it's going to last you months and months and months. So let's start working in some of this. So now let's work in these, and look at how pretty those look against the candle. So all I'm going to do with this is just stick them in. Another thing that I want to mention is it's okay if you want to change your mind. If you don't like where something is, take it out. The best thing you can do is place it where you like. But with that being said, you always want to completely remove the stem. Instead of pulling it out, if it's too far in, never ever take your stem and retract it a little bit, because what ends up happening is you create an air pocket in the hole. And the reason we don't want that is because your stems won't be absorbing water. So always make sure that if you change your mind, which it is okay to do so, to always take your stem, remove it, and reinsert. So let's work in some more. Don't forget about the top now. Since we're not going to add too much more after this, we want to make sure that we're not seeing much of the foam at this point. A little bit's okay because we do have 1 or 2 more elements to work in. Next, we have some beautiful Hypericum berries and a really pretty cream, which I think cream and burgundy is one of the best combos. So let's work in a few of these. And here is what they look like, absolutely stunning. And these are going to last a really long time compared to flowers. But if anything fades on this, flowers, greenery, whatever you decide to use, you can always pull it out. And then you have a beautiful base that you can work in another batch of roses or carnations or whatever else you decide to place in your design. But let's break a few of these down. So all I'm going to do is remove a stem. And I'm using our cutters as well. These are really sharp, so do be careful if you decide to order them. And I'll just snip the berries off. We don't need much of a stem whatsoever on these because I really want the focus to only be on the berries and not the greenery. So once we have about a dozen or so pieces this big, we can start working them in. Now that we have our berries prepped, we can start working these in. But remember what I taught you. You never want to take your stems and bring them out a little bit. If you decide to remove them or move them elsewhere or lift them up a little bit further, completely remove your stem. And now that we've worked in our berries, look at how beautiful the contrast is. The cream berries, the burgundy candles, the juniper, everything's coming together beautifully. Now it's time to add some embellishments. And since we're going to be working with burgundy, cream, the best color to work with that is gold. So I have some gold pine cones, and you can also find these available at nicksseasonaldecor.com. And we're going to just take them. I'm going to start with one right in the middle, place one on the opposing side, and then I have 2 more that I'm going to place on either end. Like that. And now let's work in a few smaller ones. So to break up the 4 large pine cones we just worked in, we're going to work in even more gold pine cones. But these are going to just add a little bit more gold without being, so bold with just the big ones. So I'm going to take 2 more, and I'm going to place them about here or so. Now the only thing left to add is some beautiful ribbon. Now I have some beautiful wired ribbon that you can find from nicksseasonaldecor.com. We have it in every color, shape, and size, and this is the 7/8 inch burgundy. And look at how it matches the pine cones beautifully. I just want to create a very simple bow tie, so all we're going to do is create one tail, create a loop, and I want the loop about 2 to 3 inches, create a second loop, and then we're going to take it one step further and create a third loop. But the third loop is going to be really small at about 2 inches so that we have a cute little bow tie. Now we're going to use our scissors, which you can also find on our website, and snip off that second tail. Now that we have the bow made, I'm just going to take a little length of wire and secure the bow. Just like that. Now that we have our bow made, we can do one of 2 things. We can place it on the side, right around here or so, or we can also place it right in the middle. So traditionally, you would tie a stick to this or use one of the picks. After 10 years, like I said before, we've kind of found things that work, and just cutting a long enough wire and kind of making sure that it's kind of bent at the end easily inserts into the foam and it stays in place. But by all means, if you're more comfortable with a pick, you certainly can use one. Just give it a good fluff and do the same thing to the other side, and then you're going to have a beautiful arrangement, and I can't wait to show you how this turned out. But if you have not yet subscribed or followed us, make sure to do so. We are on all platforms of social media, and we post content daily. I also just placed a single loop of ribbon on either side, and here is how our arrangement turned out, you guys. I absolutely love it. So thank you all so very much for watching. I hope I taught you something new and inspired you, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.